In honor of the late Val Kilmer, Mr. Divine requested I watch Tombstone this month. This movie is loaded with the cast. I have the cast up on screen so you can see everybody. Even if you don't know all their names, you probably recognize a good amount of them. I think for most people, this would have to be Val Kilmer's best performance. Looking through his IMDb, admittedly, I've only seen a couple of the movies. It's been a long time since I watched that crazy ass Batman Forever. Although from a meta sense, I think it'd be fair to say that Top Gun Maverick might be a little bit more emotional just because of them including his real life story into the movie. Obviously, he wasn't doing well in the movie, and only a few years later he's gone, which is a little bit unfair, but I think it does hit you kind of differently knowing that it's all essentially real. As far as Tombstone goes, obviously it's a classic, one of the best Western movies ever. And I think people would probably debate about whether or not Val Kilmer or Kurt Russell was better. It's a little bit unfair because Kurt Russell has maybe the more quotable lines, although even that is kind of debatable. But Kurt Russell's lines are much more kind of fiery and showy, where Val Kilmer is a little bit more subdued throughout the movie, obviously given his condition. I do think it's interesting that the movie frames Bayhan as the corrupt guy working with the cowboys and kind of the piece of shit. But then the movie ends by saying that Wyatt Earp met people in early Hollywood, and then he's the one that gets the positive treatment looking back. I'm sure the real history is pretty muddy because of a lack of technology and ability to record. And then who knows what accounts you're getting from people based on their own feelings from the time. It's also always nice to see the older movies where men are men. I wouldn't necessarily call anybody in this movie a quote unquote good person. Maybe Morgan and Virgil. They both kind of seem like they just want to do what's right by the town. But that's also after they've come and gotten kind of fat and happy. And they also do support Wyatt's behavior, even giving considerations at the time for their morality. They're not perfect. I do find it interesting that Wyatt's flaws tend to be kind of his temper and then also his relationship with Maddie. And I would say that there's one part of the movie that's a little bit underdeveloped. It's probably that component because it's kind of like she's just a druggie in the background. You see her a couple times, and the last you see of her is when Morgan dies, and then you just don't hear about her again. It's just written that she OD'd later after Wyatt left her. And I think you could say the same thing about Wyatt and Josie as well. I know it's supposed to be based on real people, but as far as the movie goes, they kind of see each other from afar, decide they're going to be together, ride horses once, and that's sort of it. There's not like a ton in the way of development. Of course, this is back when movies actually tried to be in the 2-hour neighborhood and not 3 hours of stroking their own ego. But I still think it would have been nice to see a little bit more there. I really enjoy the chemistry between the main group. It's so funny when you see older movies like Lord of the Rings and Gandalf shows up and meets Frodo, or Wyatt in this movie shows up and meets Doc. They do a really good job of just feeling like friends who are picking up where they left off. I think it's one of my biggest pet peeves in media, and this includes anime, where a character is talking to a family member and makes a point to deliberately be like, oh, my younger brother, I haven't seen you in so long. And then on top of that, the actors just feel like they're really phoning it in. In these older movies, it really feels like they're best friends. And it's funny because the settings for a lot of these are eras where you could go years without seeing someone or hearing from them, and that would be perfectly normal. It's not even like today where you can just pick up a phone and stay in touch if you want to. But I love the scene that's on screen right now, where Johnny Ringo's twirling his gun around, showing off, and Doc, in response, who's drunk, starts twirling his glass around and mimicking him. It just cracks me up every time, and it's kind of the beginning of their rivalry, and the movie does such a good job of every event escalates a little bit more until the consequences start being serious and you get to the big fights near the end of the movie. The way that it just builds and builds and builds makes the payoffs at the end so worth it, especially when you're considering how efficient the screen time is used. I don't know if there's a worse feeling than when you're watching a TV show or a movie and it feels like it's building up to something forever and it just leads to nothing. And sometimes I feel like that's due to simple incompetence. Sometimes I feel like they all want to do the subverting your expectations thing. Oh, here's a surprise. You didn't expect the buildup between Jon Snow and the Night King for 8 years to actually end with Arya stabbing him out of nowhere. By the time you get to the shootout at the OK Corral, when he wants to go for revenge, you're like, fuck yeah. Like, let's get him. I feel like there's so many movies that lack that now. And I think a big part of the reason you're lacking the payoffs that you want like that is because a lot of stuff has the need for villains to feel either one, morally complex, or two, just cartoonishly evil to the point where it kind of circles back around to being funny. And you can have a complex, interesting villain, but I feel like what so many of them want now is for you to feel bad for the villain. And because of a lot of the ineptitude going on in writing, a fair amount of them just end up feeling correct, which is another huge problem when you're wanting a big payoff for your climax or your revenge or whatever the story may be. And you can have your villains just be relatively bad people in the movie without going overboard and making them like Dr. Evil, want to blow up the whole world because it's fun type people. Obviously, in this movie, you have the Cowboys, prominently led by Curly Bill and Johnny Ringo. And we open the movie with them shooting up a wedding, which is obviously a pretty evil thing to do. Doesn't justify what they did, but they preface it with "you killed two of the Cowboys," and they escalate it. And then throughout the movie, we don't really see anything sympathetic from them. They're just kind of hanging out. They're just generally around. Obviously not great, still doing cowboy things, but nothing crazy that we see. And as far as sympathy, the only thing they really do to humanize them is after the shootout at the OK Corral, they're all upset, they want revenge, and they view themselves at that point as righteous because their friends are dead. And they're not completely uniform. Johnny is looking for something to fill kind of the hole in his heart. He's empty. He needs to be the fastest gunner. It's the only thing that gives him seemingly any pleasure in life throughout the movie. So they're not homogenous, but they're not portrayed ever as innocent. The movie has very clearly laid out good guys and bad guys, although none of them are perfect for the good guys. And the bad guys, for the most part, aren't completely evil. All that to say that this movie and many movies in this era did these type of basic things well. So even if your story wasn't great, they at least got the fundamentals right. And this movie does all those things super well, which makes for a really great movie. And another just really basic thing that this movie does well is all the characters feel like people. You have three brothers who want to go to a different town, get rich, relax. They've kind of lived their life, settled down. And throughout the movie, they just get forcibly dragged into this situation. And some of that's due to their own temperament, where they can't help themselves. And some of it is just due to the situation that other people put them in. But they feel real. The brothers get pissed off at each other. They support each other when they don't want to. They're all still kind of dealing with their own personal issues or relationship issues. For Wyatt, it's a bit against his nature to settle down, but he's still trying to because it sort of seems like what he views as the correct thing to do, even if it isn't actually what he wants. So it's a relatively simple movie story-wise with pretty interesting characters and just great execution. And it just allows for a lot of fun for the entire time. And because the movies take themselves seriously, like they used to back then, it allows the actors to really go for it. And obviously there's always a risk there. You know, when you put in a really emotional, over-the-top performance, if the writing is shit or if you don't nail it, it ends up being pretty cringe. But I prefer that so much to movies now where it feels like all the characters are winking at the camera and kind of like, oh, isn't this silly? Don't worry, we don't take this seriously either, to try to downplay any risk of coming across as cringe, which funnily enough is kind of what makes them come across as just lame. And the movies all just feel like they're being pulled from a bowl of slop. So the floor and ceiling are both just shit. But because this movie allows the actors to go for it, it pays off in spades.
It's quoting the Bible, Revelations. Behold, a pale horse. The man who sat on him was death, and hell followed with him.
Dad, what an ugly thing to say. Does this mean we're not friends anymore? If I thought you weren't my friend, I just don't think I could bear it.
Damn right you're scared. I can see that in your eyes. Skin that smoke wagon and see what happens. I'll put you out of your misery.
Say when.
Remember what I said about seeing a light when you're dying? It ain't true. I can't see a damn thing.
What hell?
Well, bye.
You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me! I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Why, Johnny Ringo.
You look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Obviously, Val Kilmer's performance is awesome. Kurt Russell's is awesome. Powers Booth. Michael Biehn, Bill Paxton, Sam Elliott, they all just nail it. Even Billy Bob Thornton, for the little screen time he has where he's getting slapped around like a bitch, allows for some pretty good humor. And because the movie allows the actors to take that risk, you end up with them having some awesome fucking lines. Obviously, you have Wyatt Earp's, "You tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me," after he's talked about being a non-believer throughout the movie. Val Kilmer's "I'm your Huckleberry" is always a go-to. My late uncle used to say that shit to me all the time whenever he wanted to talk a little bit of shit to me or take me on a foosball or something. And all of this just allows for you to end up with a really memorable, awesome, fun movie with some pretty epic moments and lines. Over 30 years later, it's still a great movie. And this is one that I think will be timeless and just holds up really well. There you go. I put a little bit of titties on screen for my outro. Mr. Divine, this was a good recommendation. It's been at least 5 years since I watched this movie. One of my favorites. Wife and I both loved watching it again. It's a good recommendation. I'm going to leave it here for this one. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. I try to respond to comments that aren't just insults. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.